Hey there, English learners. Welcome back to English Podcast 2.0. I'm Mike, and I'm like, your guide to making English stick. You know what I mean?
And I'm Jessica. I'll be kind of like helping you unlock all the secrets to remembering those tricky English words you've been, struggling with.
One of the biggest challenges we hear from English learners
Mm.
is remembering new vocabulary.
For sure.
It's frustrating, right? You spend all this time learning a word, and then poof, gone.
Yeah, it's like our brains have like a mind of their own,
Yeah.
deciding to keep some words and just toss others out.
Exactly. But the good news is there are like ways to kind of outsmart our forgetful brains and, make those words stick for good.
Totally.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
Our first technique is all about making it personal.
Mm-hmm.
What do we mean by that? Well, our brains are wired to remember things that have meaning to us, things that connect to our lives, experiences, emotions.
Exactly. It's like the difference between like trying to memorize a random phone number
Yeah.
and remembering your best friend's birthday. The phone number is just a string of digits, but your friend's birthday is loaded with like memories and emotions and all.
Right, right. So instead of just trying to memorize the definition of a word like sophisticated, which, let's be honest, can sound a bit dry,
Yeah,
we need to find a way to kind of make it relevant to our own lives.
absolutely. Let's take the word nostalgic, for example. Instead of just thinking of its dictionary definition, a longing for the past, try linking it to a specific memory.
Yeah, I love that idea. For me, nostalgic instantly brings back memories of those Saturday morning cartoons I used to watch
Yeah.
as a kid. The
Mm.
smell of pancakes,
Mm.
the sound of the TV, those
Yeah.
epic adventures.
Yeah.
It's a whole feeling.
Right.
It really is.
So now, the word nostalgic isn't just a word on a page. It's tied to a real emotion and experience, making it, like, way more memorable.
I can already see how this is going to help. But what if the word doesn't have an obvious personal connection? Like, what if I'm trying to learn a word like tranquil, which is a bit more abstract?
Yeah, that's where you get to be creative. If a word doesn't have a natural connection to your life, invent one. Tie it to a story, a song, a place, anything that gives it, like, an emotional hook.
So maybe for tranquil, I could picture myself sitting by a peaceful lake watching the sunset. That sense of calm and stillness would really bring the word to life for me.
Exactly. No, every time you hear tranquil, your brain will automatically pull up that serene image, making the meaning crystal clear.
This is making so much sense.
Okay.
Okay, so we've made the word personal.
Yeah.
What's the next memory boosting technique we have in our arsenal?
This one's my personal favorite. Create a mental picture. Our brains are visual creatures, and if we can turn a word into a vivid image, it's much more likely to stick.
Okay, I'm game. Give me a word and I'll try to come up with a memorable mental picture.
All right, how about lavish? It means luxurious, extravagant, over the top.
Lavish. Okay, I'm picturing a giant golden bathtub filled to the brim with champagne. And someone's just casually relaxing in there, sipping bubbly like it's no big deal.
Perfect. That image is so specific and a little bit ridiculous that you're definitely not going to forget it. And that's the key. The more unusual and humorous the image, the better.
So it's not about being a great artist, it's about finding an image that really stands out in your mind.
Exactly. When I was learning the word flamboyant, which means showy and attention-grabbing, I imagined a peacock wearing sunglasses and a gold chain strutting down the street.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I can practically hear the music and see the feathers flying. I'm convinced mental pictures are a winner. But here's the thing, I often feel like I learn a word one day and it's gone the next. What's the secret to really making it stick long term?
You've hit on a crucial point. You can't just like passively absorb a word and expect it to become part of your vocabulary. You have to actively use it.
Ouch, I'm definitely guilty of that. I'll highlight a word in my textbook or write it down in my notebook, but then I never actually use it in real life.
Yeah, think of it like learning to ride a bike. You can read all the books and watch all the videos you want, but until you actually get on that bike and start pedaling, you're not going to learn.
Right.
Right.
So how do we apply this use it or lose it principle to learning new words?
There are 3 key steps. First, say the word out loud. Hearing yourself say it reinforces the sound and the meaning.
Okay, so if I'm learning the word lavish, I would say lavish out loud a few times.
Exactly. The second step is to write it down in a sentence. This helps you understand the grammar and how the word is used in context.
All right, so I could write, the celebrity threw a lavish party with a chocolate fountain and a live band.
Perfect. And the third step, the most important one, is to use it in an actual conversation. This is where the real learning happens.
That makes sense. But sometimes it feels awkward to just shoehorn a new word into a conversation.
It doesn't have to be forced. Just be mindful of opportunities to use the word naturally. For example, if you're talking to a friend about a movie, you could say, the costumes in that movie were so lavish.
Right. The more I use the word in different ways, the stronger that connection becomes in my brain.
Exactly. You're training your brain to recognize that this word is important and worth remembering.
This is all starting to make sense. But before we move on, I want to recap what we've covered so far. First, we talked about making it personal, finding a way to connect the new word to our own lives and experiences.
And we saw how powerful that can be with examples like nostalgic and tranquil.
Then we explored the power of mental pictures, creating vivid and even ridiculous images to help us remember the word.
Like your golden bathtub full of champagne for lavish.
And finally, we emphasized the importance of use it or lose it, saying the word out loud, writing it down in a sentence, and using it in real conversations.
These 3 steps are key to moving a word from your short-term memory into your long-term memory.
This is all great stuff, but I have a feeling you have one more trick up your sleeve. What's that ultimate memory hack you mentioned earlier, the one that can make even the trickiest words stick?
Oh, you're right, I do. I have one more, secret weapon to share. And it's surprisingly simple. Are you ready for this?
I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
The ultimate memory hack is teaching.
Teaching. Wait, you mean like standing in front of a classroom with a whiteboard and everything?
Not quite. It's more about, the act of explaining something to someone else, even if it's just a casual conversation.
I've definitely noticed that sometimes I don't fully understand something until I, try to explain it to someone else.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. When you teach something, your brain has to, work harder. It has to organize the information, find the right words, and come up with examples. And that, effort strengthens the memory.
So it's not just about helping the other person learn, it's about solidifying the knowledge in my own mind.
Absolutely. It's like creating a mental pathway to that word, making it much easier to, access in the future.
Okay, so how would this work in practice? Could I just grab anyone off the street and start explaining a new English word to them?
You could, but maybe start with someone you know, a friend, a family member, even a pet.
My dog is about to become the most eloquent canine on the block. I can just imagine myself saying, okay, buddy, today we're tackling serendipity. Ready for this?
Exactly. And you know what? It really works. I used to teach new English idioms to my younger brother, and I found that I remembered those idioms much better than the ones I just, studied on my own.
It's like by explaining it to someone else, you're proving to your brain that you really know it.
Precisely. Let's try it out right now. I'm going to be your student, and you can teach me the word lavish, the one we've been using as an example.
All right, Professor Mike is in session. So lavish means luxurious, extravagant, over the top.
Yeah.
Imagine a party where everything is gold. The decorations, the chairs, even the food. There are chandeliers dripping with crystals and champagne flowing like a river. That's what lavish means. No holding back, just pure indulgence.
Wow, you really painted a picture there. I feel like I could walk right into that party. And you know what? I bet you'll remember lavish now, even better than before.
I think you're right. There's something about explaining it that really makes it, click in my mind.
So we've covered some, powerful memory techniques today, from making it personal to creating mental pictures to using it or lose it to teaching.
But these techniques aren't just for English learners, are they?
Not at all. They can be applied to learning anything new, whether it's a new language, a scientific concept, a historical fact, anything.
So it's not about some special language learning magic. It's about understanding how our brains work and using that knowledge to our advantage.
Exactly. And you know what's fascinating? Even native English speakers use these techniques without realizing it.
How so?
Think about how we naturally use stories, humor, and personal anecdotes in our everyday conversations.
Yeah.
These are all ways of making information more engaging and memorable.
So we're all memory hackers in a way. We just don't always realize it.
Exactly. But by becoming aware of these techniques, we can use them more deliberately and effectively.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I'm starting to see vocabulary learning in a whole new light.
That's what we're here for, to help you not only learn new words, but also, learn how to learn.
Now I'm curious, do you have any tips for remembering longer chunks of information, like phrases, idioms, or even whole sentences?
That's a great question. And it brings us to another fascinating aspect of how our brains prioritize information.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, our brains are constantly bombarded with sensory input. Sights, sounds, smells. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So the brain has to filter all that information and decide what's important to keep and what can be safely discarded.
That makes sense. Otherwise, our brains would be like overflowing. But how does this relate to remembering phrases and sentences?
Well, when you encounter a new phrase or sentence, your brain is doing the same thing. It's trying to decide if this information is valuable enough to store in long-term memory.
So if the phrase seems random or meaningless, our brain might just let it slip away.
Exactly. But here's where those memory techniques come in handy again.
You mean by making the phrase personal, creating a mental image, using it in conversation, teaching it to someone else, we're signaling to our brain that this information is important and worth keeping.
Exactly. It's like putting a big, flashing neon sign on that phrase that says, "Hey, brain, pay attention to this."
So it's not just about making the information easier to remember, it's about making it stand out from the noise and capturing our brain's attention.
Precisely. And the more we practice these techniques, the better our brains become at filtering information and prioritizing what's truly important.
Okay, so let's apply this to remembering phrases. Let's say I'm trying to learn the idiom to spill the beans, which means to reveal the secret.
Right. Well, instead of just trying to memorize the words, you could create a funny mental image of someone literally spilling a can of beans and then having to explain what happened.
I love it. That image is so vivid and memorable, and it perfectly captures the meaning of the idiom.
Exactly. Or let's say you're trying to remember the expression to bite off more than you can chew, which means to take on too much.
I could connect that to a time when I tried to learn 5 new English idioms in one day. Let's just say it was a bit overwhelming, and I definitely bit off more than I could chew.
Perfect. You've connected the expression to a personal experience, making it much more meaningful and memorable.
This is all starting to click. So by applying these memory techniques to phrases and sentences, we can make them just as memorable as individual words.
Exactly. And as you continue to learn English, you'll find that these techniques become more and more natural. You'll start to instinctively look for ways to make information more personal, vivid, and engaging.
It's like we're training our brains to become super learners.
Exactly. And the more you understand about how your brain works, the more control you have over your learning process.
This deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand the secret to making English stick.
And that's what it's all about, empowering you to become a, confident and successful English learner.
So if we want to really supercharge our English vocabulary and make those words and phrases stick, it's all about finding ways to make them, really matter to our brains.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about moving beyond just seeing words on a page and creating those personal, vivid, engaging connections that make them come alive.
Yeah, I'm already feeling more confident about tackling new English words and phrases. It's
Mhm.
like I have a whole new set of tools in my language learning toolbox.
Totally. And remember, the more you use these techniques, the more natural they become.
Right.
You'll start to instinctively look for ways to, make new information personal, create mental images, and find opportunities to teach it to others.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited to put all this into practice. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. You said that even native English speakers use these memory techniques intuitively.
That's right. Think about how we naturally use stories, humor, and personal anecdotes to make our conversations more engaging and memorable. We're constantly looking for ways to connect with each other and make information stick.
So these techniques aren't just some artificial tricks. They're actually woven into the fabric of how we communicate and learn
Yeah.
as human beings.
Exactly. Whether you're learning a new language, studying for a test, or just trying to remember where you parked your car, these techniques can be incredibly helpful. They tap into our brain's natural wiring and help us make information meaningful and lasting.
Yeah, this deep dive has been a real game changer for me. I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of how my brain works and how I can use that knowledge to become a more effective English learner.
And that's what we hope for every listener, to not only provide valuable information, but also empower you to take control of your learning journey and discover the joy of mastering a new language.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I would say this: don't be afraid to experiment and have fun with language learning. Try out different memory techniques, find what works best for you, and don't be discouraged if, some words still slip away from time to time. It's all part of the process.
That's a great point. And remember, every time you encounter a new English word or phrase, you have a choice. You can let it passively float by, or you can actively grab it, make it your own, and integrate it into your, ever-growing vocabulary.
Yeah, the power is in your hands. And as always, we're here to support you on your English learning journey.
Until next time, keep learning, keep diving deep, and keep those English words flowing.